Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will begin shortly. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this evening's workshop. I'm Ryan Keene, Vice President of Lending here at Ardent. We've hosted several virtual workshops over the last few months, and sometimes technology can throw us a little bit of a curveball, so I do ask that you be patient if we run into any issues this evening. We also understand that life in general is pretty challenging at the moment. Just know that Ardent is here to help in whatever way that we can. So please don't hesitate to contact us for any banking or borrowing needs you may have. Also, if you need to ask a question during tonight's workshop, please click on the Questions tab and submit your question. The photo to the left of the slide is of an iPad, and the photo to the right is a screen of a desktop. We have Lisa from Ardent's marketing department on the line who will relay the questions to Deb during the seminar. There will also be a Q&A session after the workshop. Also, if you're viewing the workshop from a smartphone, you will have to swipe right to see the PowerPoint. Now I'll pass this over to Deb Murray, Certified Canine Behavior Consultant and Dog Trainer and owner of Pepper's Paws, LLC, to get the workshop started.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm happy to be here. So we're going to start with just a little bit about me. I am a certified dog behavior consultant and certified trainer and a certified fear-free trainer. I mention this mainly because most people don't understand that there are zero regulations to being a dog trainer. There's no education requirements, there's no certification requirements or anything. When you start to work with a trainer, you want to make sure you understand how they do what they do, why they do what they do, and what they're going to do with your dog. And you need to be comfortable with it. I've been dog training for about 9 years. I am a proud rescue mom of 4 mixed breed dogs, which if you stay till the end, you'll see a picture of them. I've fostered over 25 years of my dog training, my life career with dogs. And as Ryan said, I own Pepper's Paws Dog Training. Hang on, okay. Before we start, a couple key concepts I'd like you to understand so you know where I'm coming from. And I'm going to refer back to these many times throughout the presentation. It's some really basic things that most people, you kind of know it, but when you don't really put it into words, or you don't understand why something's not working. And a lot of times it comes down to this. So first of all, dogs do what works for them to get their needs met. They don't want to be in charge. They're not out to dominate you. They don't want to be the boss. They have some basic needs like food, water, attention, socialization, mental and physical stimulation. And when those needs are met, dogs tend to be very easy to live with. Behavior that is rewarded is repeated because it works for the dog. Again, they don't want to be in charge. They just want to get their needs met. When you can figure out what behaviors your dog finds rewarding, or that you need from your dog and you can reward, you can put that on order with your dog. Behavior that is not repeated does not become a habit. Habits in dog behavior are very important because a lot of the things dogs do that drive us crazy are just habits they've gotten into because they work for them. Every behavior serves a purpose for a dog. Dogs generally are not wishy-washy, and they're pretty easy to understand when you look at it from their perspective. But things like saying a dog is spiteful or stubborn or dominant, they're all labels that we put on them based on human emotions, but because we think that's what the dog is thinking. But the reality is we're usually wrong, and it's usually not very helpful in solving problem behaviors. So the phrase trying to dominate me is a phrase you'll probably never hear out of my mouth in dog training, because I just don't feel it's helpful or useful in most situations. What you want to remember is you want to train the behaviors you want more of. You don't want to go down a rabbit hole of punish, punish, punish to get your needs met with your dog, because it's exhausting and honestly, it doesn't usually work very well. Okay, so the question I was asked is, where should I start with dog training? First of all, you want to set a schedule for your dog. Dogs who know what to expect, they know how the world works, are generally happier and more relaxed. Set a schedule for meal times, potty breaks, bedtime, and wake time. I am a huge fan of the Puppy Potty Log phone app. I know it exists for iPhone. I think it exists for Android. It's a free app that can be a game changer in house training. And this is a free tip I want to give you guys. If you have a puppy or adolescent or newly adopted dog that you're struggling to housebreak, or you're on the cusp of being housebroken, or you're ready to jump off the ledge because it's just not working, the app is a predictive data app, which means you put in when your dog eats and drinks and poops and pees, and the more data you give the app, the better it gets at saying, hey, your dog needs a potty break. And it will literally send you an alert saying, take your dog out in 10 minutes. Okay, it's awesome. I also like this app because a lot of times people assume, oh, the dog peed on the floor in front of me because it's being spiteful. Well, if you look at your data, the dog might have peed on the floor in front of you because it's the 10th time, before noon that it's had to pee. And maybe there's something your vet should check out. Using the app gives you a nice repository of data that you can take to your vet and say, hey, does this look normal? Show them your phone. Or print out a report and email to them. But it can be a way to really identify a root cause of a problem rather than just assuming, oh, my dog's being a jerk. In establishing a routine, you want to set up feeding times. I am a huge proponent of set meal times as opposed to free feeding for one very simple point that ties back to the above. If you know when the food goes in, you know when the poop's coming out. It makes housebreaking much, much easier. You also want to set up an exercise routine. Dogs that don't get enough exercise tend to get themselves into trouble around the house. They bark at everything that goes by, they destroy things, they jump on people, they're bored. You also want to establish a routine for quiet time, especially for puppies. Puppies are doing the hard work of growing. They need time to settle, they need time to relax and rest. If you let your puppy go all day with you and your kids because you're home and everybody's running around and bored, you could have a really grumpy puppy by about 3 in the afternoon. Establish a time for your puppy nap time, maybe during kids' downtime or when school starts, maybe during, I hate to say it, but Zoom learning time for kids. That's a great time for your puppy to take a break too. And you also want to make sure you have playtime. Our dogs need us for interaction and for socialization and for exercise. They deserve time. And what I tell my clients is, if you put it on the schedule, it's most likely to happen. The last thing about where should you start is you want to understand the signs of stress in a dog. Everybody, in my opinion, should know how to read basic dog body language. And here's another one of my best tips. The website stopthe77.com is a website with a body language video, with videos on how kids should safely interact with dogs, a video, and there's my dogs in the background saying hi, and how to greet a dog. Most adults don't know how to properly greet a dog, and kids get passed on bad information. I'll give you a hint. It's not give them your hand to smell, okay? Stopthe77.com is gold, in my opinion. It's worth everybody watching. Even if you're an adult and you don't have kids, you probably have kids in your neighborhood or your family or at the vet when you go. Really good information. Displacement behaviors are another one. That's covered in the body language video. You need to recognize when your dog is stressed before they have to shout, okay? And in my world, when I see a dog who yawns or shakes like he's wet or turns away and avoids a situation, they're all subtle signs that say, I'm not comfortable. And if you can intervene at that moment, you can prevent shouting, which is a growl, a snarl, a snap, anything like that, okay? The last one is those stress responses. So most people have heard of the fight or flight syndrome in people, right? So if you're really scared, you can run away, you're gonna run away. If you have to fight, you will. There's a third one, and I see this frequently in adolescent dogs, which is fidget, right? You have a dog maybe at the vet who's jumping on everybody, and he's acting crazy, and he's in other dogs' faces. That dog's really stressed. That's fidget. What you want to do is give him a calm place to be. So understanding these signs is something that I think every new dog owner should at least have a basic understanding of. You don't have to get a PhD in animal behavior, but a basic understanding can really serve you well throughout your life with your dog. Okay, crate training. Crate training is critical, in my opinion, for newly adopted dogs, for puppies, and for anybody who has a dog that decides, when you go out, I'm going to redecorate, because you're probably not going to like how they decorate, okay? A crate is a safety device. It's a training tool. It's a place to give your puppy somewhere to chill out, or your adolescent dog somewhere to chill out, all right? A common problem, though, is dogs cry in the crate. Why do dogs cry in the crate? A lot of times, the most simple answer is because they figure it out. You put me in, you leave the room, I whine, you come back. It's that simple. It works really well. Your dog thinks your name is whine, 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 and in they come. Okay. If you have a dog who whines in the crate or doesn't like being in the crate, what you want to work on is making them feel more comfortable and recognizing as it a safe place and a place that's where they want to be. The first step in doing that is make sure they've had enough exercise before you put them in the crate. A dog who's done nothing all day will not be happy being confined. So some exercise, maybe some training time, make sure they've had a potty break. They can go in the crate with a safe chew toy. A safe chew toy is nothing with stuffing, squeakers, parts they can break off, a toy with parts they have broken off. You want a nice, big, solid toy that they'll enjoy chewing on, a big Nylabone or a big Benny Bone or a Kong. If you have a dog who really is unhappy in the crate, you could also do a frozen Kong, where you take some of their kibble, mix it with some water and some peanut butter, freeze it in the Kong, becomes, think of, a puppy pacifier. If your dog really is having a meltdown and you need to sit by the crate in the beginning, and if you put them in the crate, they cry. If you sit next to them, they calm down. You can start there, but you want to gradually move yourself farther from the crate so that the dog doesn't think, oh, here's the routine. I go in the crate, they sleep on the floor next to the crate, I'm safe. You want to gradually move away and get them used to you being farther away when they're in the crate. And I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions on crate training.
Deb, we do have a question on crate training. One question is, what if your dog is trained very well with the crate, but after COVID-19 and now going back to work, the puppy is showing separation anxiety and hurting himself trying to get out of the crate?
Okay, so the dog was crate trained and is now not crate trained? Can you repeat that question?
Yes, the dog is crate trained and was crate trained very well.
Okay.
But now that the owner is going back to work, the puppy is hurting himself trying to get out of the crate.
Okay, so the puppy could be having some separation distress, is what that sounds like. If possible, have somebody home with the dog when the person's at work. But that person home needs to put the dog in the crate, leave for a minute, come right back. Leave again for a couple minutes, come right back, and gradually get the dog used to, I leave, I always come back. It's best if the owner can do it, but if they have to be at work, if they can have anybody that can help them during the day, or if the owner can work it on the weekends. But what you need to do is you need to make sure they've had plenty of exercise, they've had some mental stimulation, they're more tired, and then start working on the crate on the weekends when the owner's able to be home with them and work on those gradual separation times. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
We do have another question, and it is, when you are crate training your dog, do you suggest putting like a toy or a Kong in there for the dog to play with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you put the dog in the crate with a toy or a Kong, and it's something that they can't ingest, they can't hurt themselves with, I think that's absolutely fine. In that situation, the crate is definitely not a punishment. It's just a safety device. So it's much like if you would put like a mobile over a baby's crib, right? Something to occupy them while they're laying in the crib. It's the same kind of a thing for sure. But just to repeat, nothing with stuffing or squeakers or small parts or anything that they could ingest or get stuck in their throat or anything like that. I like to think toys that are almost as big as the dog's head is a really good size toy for being in the crate.
And we have one more question before we move forward that is not related to crate training. It's in regards to thunderstorms. And do you have any suggestions for dogs that shake during thunderstorms? Okay.
So thunderstorms, exactly why dogs are afraid of thunderstorms, there's no one answer. It can be they sense the barometric pressure in the air, so the pressure changes and they feel that. It could be they see lightning and that's scary, and it could be the sound of thunder. What I would do, first of all, with a puppy is, as best you can, whenever a thunderstorm hits, like during the day, in the early evening, When you hear it coming, get the puppy engaged in play. Make the lead up to the storm and then the storm fetch time, playtime, so that the dog associates thunderstorm means something good is going to happen. That's where I would start with a puppy for sure. With an older dog, I would give the dog a safe place to be. So maybe put a cover over the crate, like a blanket over the crate. Or if they want to hide in a closet, or if they want to just be next to you, I would let that happen. Now there's a misconception that if you reward a dog when they're afraid, you're rewarding the behavior and they're going to get more fearful. Fear is an emotion. You can't reinforce an emotion. Okay, it's just not possible. So if there's a storm happening and your older dog is afraid and wants to sit by you, I would assume the dog sits by you at other times, then I'd be like, okay, that's fine. You know, pat him a couple times. It's good. We're watching TV. It's fine. And act like it's no big deal. If you act like it's no big deal, the dog is less likely to act like it's a big deal. If your dog has really severe thunderstorm phobia, I would talk to your veterinarian. There are drugs on the market, especially newer ones, that can work very, very quickly for thunderstorms. But your veterinarian is the only person legally allowed to and qualified to make a drug recommendation. So I would definitely have a conversation if you're seeing your dog really have a panic attack over a thunderstorm. Other things you can try with dogs with mild thunderstorm phobia, if you go on and I can't say the name of that device that Amazon has, you say, hey, and it turns on. I have one in the room, I can't say it. Or Google Home, you can say play thunderstorm, and you can have it at a very low volume and gradually increase the volume as the dog gets more and more tolerant of the sound, and at the same time break into that game of fetch or break into that toy or training time to make that positive association.
And that was our last question for now.
Okay. The next topic we were asked to give some information on was how to stop begging. So I made a couple assumptions on this: is how to stop begging at the table, begging for food, begging when you're watching TV and you're eating popcorn. If we go back to the first slide talking about concepts to understand, I don't want to punish begging behavior, because I don't know about you, but I eat 2 or 3 times a day. I might have guests over a couple times a month, and at least in normal circumstances. If you have to punish every time, that's exhausting. That's kind of silly in my book. What I would do is I would decide what I want my dog to do instead, right? So let me give you an example. When I go in my kitchen to cook or get something to eat, my dogs know if they bug me and beg and check out the counter, I'm going to ignore them, or I'm going to kind of take the space and move them out of the way. They're not going to get anything. But if they go to their spots, which is roughly about where their food bowls are in the kitchen, and they lay down, sometimes they get paid. And when I'm doing dog training, I do refer to it as paying the dog. You do what I want, I'm going to give you what you want, right? I'm going to pay you. My dogs know I'm in the kitchen, go to your spots, and every once in a while, the cheese fairy visits or the dog treat fairy visits, because my dogs are hanging out away from the counter, lying down, patiently waiting to see what happens. They don't always get paid. Sometimes they do. You want to be consistent with not rewarding the begging behavior, okay? And also with counters, not letting them score, okay? So if there's food on the counter and your dog gets it once, you can bet they're going to try again. Dogs do what works for them. Back to that first slide. If it works for them, they're going to do it again. If the dog goes on the counter and gets a loaf of bread, they're going to do it again, okay? With the consistency, if one person in the house decides, oh, I'm making a sandwich and you all should have some too, the dog's going to think, anybody goes in the kitchen, I might get paid. And that behavior is going to be reinforced. And even if it's every once in a while, the dog's going to keep going back to it if it has been successful. I like to have house rules. No feeding from the counter, no feeding from the table, no feeding from the couch. And this applies to guests as well. And grandma, at least in our house, grandma can be the popcorn queen. Not good, right? Grandma has to know the dogs can't have popcorn, the dogs can't have crackers, because you want to share, okay? If I have extra food, let's say I have extra chicken or salmon after dinner and I want to share it with my dogs, they either do something to earn it, meaning they'll approach me and they'll sit when I ask them to, and I'll pay them for that, or I put it in their bowls and it goes in their bowls after the meal is over, okay? Just remember, if begging is rewarded, it will be repeated. and that is the opposite of what we want. Okay. So I've thought about how to kind of title this slide and how to structure it, and I like to focus on what you should do rather than what you shouldn't do. So I called it common training mistakes. So let's put this in the light of what you should do instead. So if you want to frustrate yourself and your dog, focus on what you don't want, right? So I get a lot of requests for, I want my dog to stop jumping. I want my dog to stop barking. I want my dog to stop pulling on a leash. That's not actually what you want. You want your dog to sit politely and greet guests. You want your dog to not bark at strangers, or so to be polite with strangers. You want your dog to walk politely next to you on a leash. So focus on what you want, not what you don't want, because you can train what you want. You can teach behaviors you want. If you think about how many things your dog could do that you don't want your dog to do, the list is literally endless. Focus on what you want the dog to do. Another common mistake is people are inconsistent or wishy-washy. The best example I can give is I love it when dogs know to go outside, you will sit at my door. When you sit, I open the door to the fenced yard and off you go. I ask my clients to make this a house rule as well, whether you're going out on a walk or you're going out in the backyard. I like dogs to sit at doors so they slow down, they collect themselves, and they move forward when I let them. And I don't care who goes out first. Depending on the configuration of your door, your steps, whichever, safeties, whoever can go out safely first is who should go out, okay? If you have 4 people in a household and 3 say sit at door and the one person doesn't, chances are that dog is going to struggle with learning that concept because in the dog's mind, I don't always have to do this. So be consistent and don't be wishy-washy. You either sit at the door or you don't, and own it. Another place I see a lot of problems is where people use food as a bribe. And by that I mean they have, a piece of food in their hand. Here, dog, sit. Here, dog, sit, all the time. You don't want to do that. I always start with food in training because it's a currency the dog understands the best. Dogs will work for food. That's why I use it. But when I'm training sit, for example, I'll have a piece of food in my right hand and I'll say sit and lower it over the dog's head. When the dog sits, he gets the food. As we build this, it becomes lower with this hand, pay with the other hand. So they never get the one I lured them with. Then it becomes sit, here comes the food. And then from there it becomes sit, I open the door. Sit, I throw your ball. I use food as a training tool, but not a crutch. And that's a mistake a lot of folks make. If you're working with a trainer and you're using food, ask them to explain to you and give you examples of how do you move from needing food to giving out food when you're moved by the dog's behavior. And there are sometimes my dogs are just awesome with like coming back from the fence when there's distractions. I might pay extra for that. They might actually get food for that versus just good job, thank you. But it's not a crutch. You want to be careful about that. Along the same lines, I see people that don't use toys or play or life rewards like access to outside as rewards for good behavior or behavior you've asked for. If your dog will sit for a piece of food or a piece of kibble or a treat, I'll bet you they'll sit to have their toy thrown too. Look for places in your life where you can ask your dog to do something and pay them with whatever means the most in that moment, instead of always going for food. The other thing I find, especially with toys, they can be a great way to teach commands like drop it, commands like come. The reward, so with drop it, you have a toy. I tell you to drop it. You drop it, I give it back to you, or I throw it. Right? It's a great training tool in that way that is really underutilized. Along the same lines, praise. If you doubt if your dog loves praise, the next time you catch your dog looking at you, it's like, oh, good boy, who's a good boy? And see if they don't wag their tail. That means they like it. Use that in your training with them. Another thing I see quite often is we ask the dog to do more than they're capable of. A good example could be you have a dog who's not sure about strangers. Well, let's take the dog over to the friend's house where they're having a party with 20 people. Your dog said, wait a minute, I've met 3 people my whole life. I gotta meet 20 at once. And your dog maybe barks and backs up and is like, whoa, I'm not comfortable. You need to gradually introduce them to things that are new or possibly stressful or overwhelming, instead of assuming, well, you can do it because you met 3 people, you can meet 20, no problem. Not always a good strategy. The next one is probably my favorite, and I'm gonna make a statement that's gonna sound like I'm being a smart aleck, but I promise I don't mean it that way. People will assume that their dog comes knowing English. Your dog doesn't speak English. You have to teach the dog that certain sounds or commands have a certain meaning and will yield a certain response. Okay? They don't come knowing English. So you need to teach them things. The two I see the most, and this is a head scratcher for some people, your dog doesn't come knowing their name. They don't come knowing what come is. You have to teach both of them. And if you haven't trained your dog, you can't expect your dog to do it when you tell them. It's really that simple. The last thing is only training during training sessions or training classes. And here's what happens. Your dog is very context specific when they learn. So they learn a command from you in a certain setting. And then they do a certain behavior, they get a certain reward. To them, it's not just I learned how to sit. It was I learned how to sit with Dad in the training center tonight. And then when you get home, the dog's like, sit? What is the sit you speak of? I have no idea. They're not being dumb. They're not being stubborn. They're like, I don't know what you want. Like, this doesn't make sense. The concept is called generalizing, which means you teach the dog commands in different environments with different trainers, meaning family members, under different circumstances with different distractions. And they generalize the behavior, meaning sit means sit no matter who I'm with or where I am. It's how you get really reliable behaviors. If you only ever train in your kitchen, your dog will listen like a rock star in the kitchen. In the living room, you may or may not exist. Train around other places. If you train in a training class, the reason why I give my students homework, both in private lessons and in my classes, is so that they train outside of the environment where they first taught the dog in. The dog has to learn in different places to listen and build up that. Think of it as making that the muscle of attention stronger. You have to build it. They don't come automatically knowing it. Okay. Let's talk about pandemic. Yeah, go ahead.
We do have a couple questions before we do move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our questions is, what types of human foods do you suggest using as a bribe for your dog?
Well, I don't use any for bribes, but for training, first of all, you need to know what food is not safe to give your dogs, first of all. And if you Google foods that are not safe for dogs, the ASPCA website has a great resource, and it has all the different foods that are dangerous. Take a minute if you're a new dog owner to read through that list and really understand it. There's a couple on there that are a surprise to most people. Most people know chocolate is bad and maybe grapes are bad. On that list is also avocados, raisins. A big one lately is xylitol, which is found in sugarless gum. So that can be particularly dangerous for your dog. First, you need to understand what you should never feed your dog. And then when I do training, if I have a dog who is scared, let's say unsure about people or going to new places, what I will try to do is I'll up the value of the reward. Or if it's also distracting, if we're working outside with lots of other people and dogs around, I call it paying what the job is worth. So if I'm in a scary environment or a distracting environment or working on something really new, like if I'm trying to get a dog to go through an agility tunnel, in my mind, I'm going to pay what that job is worth. And that job is worth a lot more than doing sit in my kitchen. So I have used chicken, hot dog, cut up in tiny pieces, chicken, little pieces of American cheese. I taught more puppies to do steps in American cheese than anybody would believe. It works really well. Any kind of meat that's not fatty. I don't like lunch meat that can be too salty, but a little bit of American cheese, a little bit of chicken, salmon, beef, anything like that can be fine. My dogs like watermelon, can be good. When I'm using food for training though, I like to make it about the size of my pinky nail. Or anybody who's old enough to remember Monopoly and the little green houses, I like treats that size for any kind of food training.
Another question we have is about a dog who takes medication daily, and the dog will only take the medication with food. Is that okay, or do you have any other suggestions on how to give the dog medication without the food?
No, I mean, as long as the vet hasn't said not to give it with food, give it with food. I feed, so I have one of my dogs is almost 15, or maybe she is 15. I don't like to think about it, but she's up there. She gets several pills at every meal. And the way I start with it, she's also not a foodie, so she'll eat anything. The pills, though, she will spit out. I will either, if she's really hungry, I'll get a little bit of kibble. I'll mix the pills in the kibble, and there's two big ones in the morning, and I just have her eat it out of my hand. Or I'll tell her to sit and then let her eat it out of my hand. She wolfs them down. At nighttime, she's a little more discerning. So we'll do cream cheese or peanut butter, or kind of American cheese, kind of wrap it around there. And then what I do is when I'm going to give this to them, I'll tell her to sit. So she thinks she's getting the treat. But I don't think there's any reason to expect your dog to take a pill because you said so. And the little bit of effort it takes for you to put in some food, to me, it's worth it. Dogs' sense of smell and taste is much more sensitive than ours. So while we think you just put a pill in your mouth and slug some water and it's gone, your dog can't do that. So I respect the fact that it might taste funny, and I'll pay what that's worth. That's easy.
All right, and that was our last question for now.
Okay. All right, let's talk pandemic, because we're not all tired of talking about the pandemic, I'm sure. Okay, I'm making an assumption that life is going to change for a lot of people, either over the summer or with the school year. Kids go back to school, teachers go back to teaching in some capacity. Life's going to change. You don't want to wait until a week before school starts or the night before school starts to get your dog used to the concept of life is about to change. Okay. One of my biggest concerns when I look at just my client base now and the phone calls I get every day is that myself and lots of other dog trainers and shelters and rescues are going to get overwhelmed with dogs with separation anxiety when life goes back to normal, because most people are home 24/7, or at least a whole lot more than they used to be. And a lot of people got new dogs. So now your new dog thinks like normal life is everybody's home all day. I'm safe. I'm not getting time in the crate because everybody's home all day. I'm getting 7 walks a day because everybody's home all day. And what they don't know is that that's going to change. And for a lot of dogs, that change is going to be pretty severe from what they're used to. And if you're not going to go back to work or school and leave the home in the fall, you're probably going to resume school if you have school-age kids. And maybe that means, 4 or 5 hours a day like this for your child, where you don't want your dog, bugging for attention, going bananas, looking for something to do, and you can't walk them as much. So what you want to do is start now, alone time every day, either while you're home or when you leave the house. If you don't absolutely trust your dog to know he's not going to redecorate on you, she's not going to have an accident, not going to get into trouble. If you can't say all of those are definites, great. Okay. If your day, let's say life magically goes back to normal in September, wouldn't that be great? And you're going to be out of the house for 8 hours a day, and the kids are out of the house for 7 hours a day. You want to start to get your dog used to that routine several weeks before it's going to happen, because a dog who's used to my people are home 24/7 to 2/3 of my waking hours are going to be alone now. You want to start by gradually shifting them back to a normal, called work and school schedule, much like people do with their kids. Most people, their bedtime is a little bit later in the summer. Maybe they get up a little bit later. They start shifting them back to school time as they get closer to it. Do that with your dog too. You want to keep up safe socialization in a pandemic. I know we have to social distance. I know you can't get too close to strangers, and I don't recommend that you do, but you can definitely still take your dog places where he or she will see people. You want your dog to get used to, I see people on walks, people at the park. I don't get to say hi to everybody because we don't want that in real time, right? If your dog said hi to 50 people on a walk, it would take you an hour to go a mile. So keep up the safe socialization. As far as socializing to other dogs, I believe most daycares in the area are now open. Your dog can go to daycare, play with some other dogs, be more tired, maybe come home and go in the crate and have some alone time after daycare. That's what I would do. You want to keep up your dog's exercise and mental stimulation when your life gets busier for you. A lot of dogs right now are getting 3, 4, 10 walks a day. They're probably getting enough exercise that they look at you and go, oh God, not again, get the leash away from me. That's probably going to change. And if for no other reason, it's going to change when the days get shorter and a little bit colder as we get into fall and into winter. You still want to have a plan for exercising and giving your dog mental stimulation just throughout this whole pandemic and as we get into the fall and winter. If you do nothing and assume you can shift from tons of exercise and your attention all day to nothing, your dog's going to rebel and it's not going to be pleasant. Okay? Have a plan for that. Don't put off training now just because you can't get into a group class or you can't have somebody do face-to-face training with you. So there are some places doing group classes. There are some people doing face-to-face training. We're doing tons and tons of Zoom lessons, which are similar to this, only I demo with a dog when I do the Zoom lessons usually. Don't put off training. Remember that first slide, habits. Dogs get into habits. That's what they do. If you let a dog jump on people for a year and then call me and say, my dog jumps on people, what do? We have a lot of work to do, okay? Remember those habits. Start working on things now. A very important one, don't put off getting vet checkups or vaccines, medical care, dentals, or grooming care. Most vets, at least the ones in our area that I know of, are doing curbside, where you make the appointment, you go to the vet, call them from the parking lot, I'm here, they come out, they wear a mask, you wear a mask, they take your dog in, they do what they have to do, and they bring them out. Even if your dog is challenging at the vet, don't put off vet care. A lot of problems, medical problems in dogs, if they're caught earlier, they can be resolved. If you let them go, they get hard to resolve and or expensive, or sometimes you just can't resolve them if they go too far. Don't put that off. Same for grooming. A lot of people struggle with the thought of, well, my dog's nails are getting long and my groomer's closed and my groomer's booked out for months. Some vets will do nails. If you let nails go, what happens is the quick grows farther and farther and farther up the nail as the nail grows, and you're more likely to hit a quick, which is that soft, really bloody part inside the nail. When you hit a quick, your dog bleeds like crazy. Keep up on that care. Same thing with long-haired dogs and mats. Don't let it go. If you're having challenges with your dog, and I'm talking aggression or fearful behavior, you can work on that in a pandemic with the right trainer. These things can all be made better. And again, if you let them go, they're going to be worse when life gets back to normal and you can go to a group class or go to have someone come to your house or whatever. You're going to have a lot more work to do, and it's more expensive to do it that way. So definitely, just as much as we can, carry on as normally as you can. And there's a lot more that we can do than I think we've realized sometimes. Okay, as I said, Pepper's Paws is doing Zoom lessons now. It's the same content we do in in-person lessons and in classes. We just do it over Zoom. We have a lot of fun in our classes. Our Zoom lessons they're pretty cool. We've gotten some great results with some puppies. We've had some aggressive cases, a lot of rowdy adolescents. Food aggressions, separation anxiety. I hate to say it, but I'm probably gonna be pretty busy with separation anxiety as we get into the fall. I would rather do things like this to share information so that people can avoid the heartache that a lot of times follows separation anxiety. And I promised you a picture of my dogs, and that is my 4 dogs. The black dog in the back on the right side is Pepper. That's who I named the business after. She was the best first dog an adult could have. Over the course of the next 2 years, I added the other 4 and all the foster dogs. So that's my guys. Questions?
Deb, we do have some questions that are coming in. So one of our questions is there certain equipment you should use when training a new puppy?
A crate, a 6-foot leash. I don't like retractable leashes. A retractable leash is the kind where you clip it onto the dog and then they pull it out to make the leash come out. That literally teaches the dog how to pull because they have to pull it. For puppies, I like lots of good toys, variety of textures, shapes, squeakers, and let the puppy explore new sights and sounds and textures, figure out what they like. Kongs for sure. They make puppy Kongs are usually pink or blue. They're smaller and softer than the adult ones. If you take your puppy's Kong, take some of your puppy's kibble, put it in a cereal bowl, mix in some water and a little bit of peanut butter. So you kind of got like a goop, like a wet, kind of soft kind of mush, but not so totally a total mess. Put it in the Kong, put some peanut butter on the end, put it in the freezer for like 2 hours. You've just made a puppy pacifier. Best thing ever.
Our next question is, what are your thoughts on those prong collars for puppies?
For puppies? Absolutely not.
Gosh, dogs.
No, a prong collar. So if we go back to teach the dog what you want the dog to do, a prong collar teaches the dog it's not safe to pull, because if they pull, it digs into their neck or puts pressure on their neck, and it inhibits that pulling behavior. But your dog still doesn't know how to walk on a leash. I would instead work on a lot of it. Focus on attention in the house where the dog looks up at you and walks with you. Reward the heck out of that. And then when you go outside, continue that behavior and keep rewarding attention outside, and you'll never need a prong collar.
All right. Our next question is roughly how much alone time is fair for a 12-week-old puppy?
Well, so first of all, during the day, a good rule of thumb for how long a puppy can be during the day between potty breaks is the age in months that convert that to hours. So 12-week-old puppy is about 3 months old. That puppy should not be left in a crate more than 3 hours. Their bladder muscles are not strong enough at that point to hold everything in for more than 3 hours. So for a 12-week-old puppy, I would start, if they're getting no alone time right now, I would start even with 15 minutes a couple times a day. Put them in the crate, go take a shower. Put them in the crate, go run a quick errand, and gradually increase that time. And I would increase it up to, as the dog ages and can be alone longer, up to what your normal day will look like whenever normal is, right? So if your normal day is you're a school teacher, you're out for 6 hours a day or 7 hours a day. Your dog can handle that time alone when your dog is about 6 to 7 months old. Once they hit about 8 months old, you pretty much can go all day, and those muscles are more developed. They should be able to be left alone in the crate longer if they need. But at a minimum, I would say start with 15 minutes, gradually increase the time. And if you're home during the day and you're always home during the day, think about how long it takes you to go grocery shopping or to be mom taxi after school. And I would make that your goal.
All right. Our next question is, how do you safely introduce neighborhood dogs to a new puppy while taking walks?
Oh, we can do a whole webinar just on that topic. First of all, if you're going to introduce the puppy to dogs on walks, you want to have asked your vet, is my dog vaccinated enough to meet strange dogs, first of all. And if your vet might say no, not until they've had 3 rounds of distemper and rabies. They might say yes if you know the dog's owner and you know the dogs are vaccinated. And every vet kind of has a different spin on that. I would ask your vet what they think. And then before I even show up with my puppy with my neighbor, I want to ask my neighbor, does your dog like to meet puppies? Has your dog met puppies? Has your dog met other dogs? Does your dog like to play with other dogs? It is not uncommon for people to have no idea if their dog likes other dogs, for sure, or they get the answer, mostly. And I personally have been in situations where I've been out in public, I have somebody coming up to me with a strange dog, and I don't let my dogs meet strange dogs on walks, ever. And the woman proceeded to almost chase me around a picnic table to have our dogs meet. And I just said, no, she's not friendly. Well, Pepper actually is very friendly, but I said, no, she's not friendly. She was like, oh. I said, why, is yours? She said, oh, I don't know. I thought I'd find out. And that's happened more than once. If you're sure the dogs, first of all, one dog at a time, definitely only one dog at a time of the neighbor's dog. Second of all, I don't like nose-to-nose greetings. You want to meet? You want to say hi? Let's start taking a walk together. Have the dogs start kind of far apart, gradually come closer together as their behavior and their body language shows that they want to say hi. That's where that dog body language video from the beginning can come into. But I like them just to walk parallel, gradually come closer together, quick sniff, keep going. I would not do more than one dog at a time meeting your puppy, and keep the meeting short and really be careful, because if the person says, oh, my dog likes most dogs, I wouldn't introduce the puppy. Because if your puppy has a scary or painful experience meeting a dog when they're very young, that's going to leave an emotional mark. And you don't want your dog to think, oh, I don't like other dogs because that one was scary, therefore all dogs are scary. And that can happen.
All right, another question we have, Deb, is One of our guests has a dog that's 1 year old and is chewing chair cushions when he or she is alone. Do you have any suggestions on how to resolve that?
Yes, a crate. A 1-year-old dog, generally in my book, has not earned the right to have free access to a house, unsupervised free access to a house. And if the dog is chewing cushions when the dog is alone, the dog either is taking advantage of an opportunity to put something new in his mouth, the dog is stressed and relieving the stressful behavior by chewing, the dog is bored, and boy, wouldn't that be fun to de-stuff that chair. Either way, a 1-year-old dog, almost without exception, I think is too young to be out of a crate when left unsupervised. So that would be my best suggestion.
All right, another question that we do have is, what are your thoughts on how to get a puppy to respond to a bell for potty training?
Oh, okay. So that one again could be another webinar, but basically you want to first build up an interest and a comfort level in ringing the bell. So I teach a command called touch, and touch means come nose bump my hand. Once the dog learns that, I then transition to the bell and I have it touch the bell. Then I make touching the bell a game, and we play that game several times a day. I take the bell out, I hold it out, the puppy rings it. I want the puppy to know ringing the bell makes good stuff happen. You can also then, before you take the puppy out, ring the bell yourself. So get them used to bell, door opens, bell, door opens. And then you basically link them all together over lots of short sessions, move to hanging the bell on the door. So the puppy rings the bell, the door opens, and out you go. If you Google that or go on YouTube and do a search for it, there's hundreds of videos on how to teach a dog to ring a bell, but that's generally how I do it in a nutshell.
Another question we have is that it says, my dog was with other dogs prior to me, and we usually have good interactions with other dogs on walks. However, sometimes he gets too excited and can look aggressive. I want to socialize him with the daycare, but how can I be sure that his behavior will be safe?
Okay, so if you're socializing in a daycare, what I would do is, first of all, interview daycares in your area. Go do tours. If you can get inside, now not all daycares letting people in, but they can probably do a virtual tour. They have an online tour, but talk to the people that run it. Understand what they do to keep dogs safe and healthy and happy while they're there, first of all. If you don't like what you see, keep looking, find one you like and trust. Ask your friends when they take their dog, that kind of a thing. Well-run daycares will require you to provide proof of vaccinations. They'll want you to fill out a form addressing points about your dog's temperament and behavior, and there's a whole laundry list most places use. On that form, you should have the opportunity to say, my dog's usually good but gets overexcited, and just be honest. Tell them everything about the dog's behavior. Then when the dog goes to the daycare, most daycares start with an evaluation where they take the dog from you and they take the dog back into the daycare and they introduce to a couple dogs one at a time, or maybe a bunch of dogs. Everybody has their own way of doing it, but usually it's some semblance of they introduce the dogs, usually off leash without you in the room. They can tell, the well-run ones can, is the dog safe or not? And as long as you're honest and explain it, then let them, work their magic, so to speak, and see what comes out of it. As far as on walks, one of the things we talked earlier about using life rewards to reward behavior you want more of, right? This is a really simple thing to do. So your dog is excited to meet other dogs, but sometimes sounds aggressive. Great. So you have two dogs over here. You have your dog over here. He's coming near them, gets aggressive, move him away. Keep walking. As he comes down, move him back. He gets aggressive, move him away. What you're doing is you're controlling access to those dogs, and your dog gets access when your dog is calm and respectful and can handle it. And that's a great way to teach your dog calm behavior. Appropriate behavior allows you to walk with other dogs. Rowdy, pushy, or inappropriate behavior makes those dogs go away.
All right, Deb, we have 2 more questions.
Okay.
So our next question is, do you have any key suggestions on how to properly leash train a puppy for walks?
Start inside with the dog's daily kibble in your hand, maybe in a bag or in a little pouch or something, and have the dog at your side. Say, come on, let's go, and just pay it, little bit of kibble for being at your side and walking with you. See if the dog will walk next to you all over your house over the course of several meals of training. Right? If the dog's walking next to you and paying attention to you and looking at you, add the leash. Do the same exercise again. Keep working on that when you go outside. So now the dog is inside on leash, looking at you, paying attention, not pulling ahead, focused on you. Move to your driveway. Same exercise. Build that skill of the leash going on means it's time to pay attention to me. And then gradually transition to more and more distracting areas. If the puppy starts to pull, stop. Pulling makes you stop. When the puppy checks back in, say, come here. Let's try this again. And then move forward again. It'll feel really slow and tedious probably in the beginning, but this is the best way to never have to use a harness or a prong or a halty or a gentle leader on a big dog. If you build the skill of your dog paying attention to you, that's going to be a skill that they will just get stronger and stronger the more you reinforce it. It's a simple thing to do. It just takes some patience.
All right, and our last question is, when do you think is the right time to start training a new puppy?
Okay, in Pennsylvania, the youngest age you can legally adopt a dog is 8 weeks. 8 weeks and 2 or 3 days. Actually, for house training, I would start day 1. And really good breeders, they've already started training on your dog. Training isn't just commands. Training is setting expectations, exposing new stimuli. It's letting the dog know what's normal and what's expected. But for puppies, we do puppy training beginning in 8 weeks. We start with housebreaking, crate training, alone time. We move into, and usually at the first lesson, a couple commands as well, maybe a sit and a lay down command, and we build from there. The younger you start, I think the better results you get over time with your dog. You're never fully done, and that's probably an important point to make. You're never done training, right? There's always something new you can teach your dog or a behavior that you can reinforce because you really like it. Like my dogs come out of the yard like rock stars. Like I call them, they're like right there. We still train it. I will deliberately look at when they see people going by and call them and cheer them on. And sometimes if they really impress me, I run them in the house and give them a piece of food just to say, hey, that was awesome. So they're never too young and they're never too old. My 15-year-old Pepper, if we're playing ball, she knows the drill. She brings the ball to me, she puts it in my hand, she sits, and I throw it. And that's training. So never too young, never too old. And honestly, with older dogs, the more you can continue to work with them, the more you keep their brain sharp, give them some enrichment, keep them engaged, they're happier.
Right, and that was our last question, Deb. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Deb, for providing us new pet parents with some great information, and thank you to everyone who took time out of their day to attend our workshop. We would like to thank everyone for attending. There will also be a short survey sent out, and we would love to hear your feedback to help us improve for our future workshops. As a reminder, Ardent offers its members our Lend a Paw line of credit to give you on-demand access to extra cash when you need it for any pet-related expenses. Please keep an eye out for announcements on upcoming workshops, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.